And we are live. Welcome to Disorder in the Court. This is a special stream about the Delphi murders. I have not covered this case previously on any of my channels, either Checkmate or here. But Richard Allen is in the middle, who the accused murderer of Liberty and Abigail, the two young girls in Indiana. He's been jailed for quite some time while they're working through these pretrial issues. And today is the last day of a 3-day hearing. Hello, Music City Mom. Where, a 3-day pretrial hearing. Hello, Mayla's mom. Nice to see you. So the reason I'm covering this is because it's court related on this channel, because it follows what's happening in court. But also, hey Marie, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. Hey Teacup, at the news coming out about the hearing yesterday. So, objection, hearsay, Your Honor. Hello. Objection. Actually, I have a little clip. I have a little objection clip here for you.
Grounds.
grounds. Anyway, nice to see you all. Hello, Kathy 4. So I was pretty surprised by this update. And the reason I'm so surprised is because, as a person who follows true crime but hasn't followed this but hasn't followed this case super closely like a lot of other people have. Hello, Just Dawn. There's been a lot of question about Richard Allen's guilt, and there's been a lot of courtroom drama around this. There's been questions about the attorneys. The judge got his attorneys thrown off the case, and then they appealed and got back on the case. There just seems to be a lot of just messiness around this case. And part of that messiness is around the defense attorneys basically saying that Richard Allen's any confession he ever might have made was coerced, and that the murders were actually done by Odinists in prison, like people, prison guards who follow Odin. Okay, so here's the thing, Mayla's mom. Let's listen to this reporting that came into Court TV last night from people who were actually in the room. It's one thing if he confessed maybe once, maybe twice, blah 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 blah. They have logged something like 60 different confessions. That's just a little. It is crazy, like the Young Thug trial, Marie. It is crazy. So let me just show this to you, because I know you're anxious to see this. I keep hyping it up. Let's listen. And who you're first going to hear from is the people who were in the room.
Today was a pretty devastating day for the defense team. We learned that there have been over 60 confessions, many of which have been recorded on video and audio, and some of which actually include a number of specific details about the crime that only the killer would know. And those have been to a myriad of different people.
So that is a really important fact right there, you guys. A really important fact. He is saying things in these confessions. So again, there are 60, something like 60 different confessions that they've been able to log and witness through recordings and other inmates that have come forward and talked. But he's relaying information that can only be made by the killer. Okay. And that's one of the things that one of the reasons that investigators and police try to keep certain facts of the case blind to the public is because that helps. Keeping some of that information blind to the public helps them determine the real killer if they were to come forward. They don't want a false confession. They don't want a false confession. So they want to make sure that, and I can't speak for the officers who are handling this and for the court, staff or anything like that. But in general, you don't want a false confession. So you want to be able to identify that whoever is making this confession is really making a real confession. That's totally fine, Mayla's mom. It is totally okay for you to be I don't mind people having opposing opinions in my chat to me or anybody else, as long as you're respectful, and everybody's being respectful. So let's keep listening.
People, including Alan's wife and mother, including prison staff, including other fellow inmates, but it's not just one person, it's at least 30. So there was a period of time after finding God that Alan was essentially telling everyone who would listen that he was guilty, he was sorry for what he did, and in order to join his family in heaven after dying, he needed to make a clean break of it and explain to everyone what he had done to those two girls in the trails of Delphi that day.
So when I heard all of this, I am always the type of person who's going to say, all right, what's the other side of the story here? Like what could be the counter to this story? Well, he was coerced that many times. And this explanation that he basically found religion at a certain point and really felt like he needed to make these confessions. That is a very normal reaction by a guilty party. Yeah. And I do want to reiterate here, the very frustrating thing about all of this is that the judge has ruled there are no cameras in the court for this entire case. Okay. So we're never going to get cameras in the court. We can only go by what's being said on court TV or reporters who are coming out and reporting about what's going on. But this particular segment here that I'm playing has several different people that were in the room. So let's just keep going.
Now, did you say 60 alleged confessions?
Over 60 was the conservative estimate by Detective Brian Harshman, who was the last witness in today's hearing, but perhaps the most significant because he gave the most details about the case.
It was a shocking moment. People in the courtroom, their mouths were agape. It was unbelievable. It was a real game changer.
Susan, describe that moment for us.
Oh, it was the end of the day, as you know, Vinny, being in a courtroom as the day drags on and you get little breaks and you feel people kind of shifting in their chairs. I was just in court all day with Anya and Kevin. I'm in my hotel room. Hope the shot looks good. It's last minute. But so we're in there and it's last minute and he gets called to the stand. And he said, I've been in law enforcement 30 plus years, 17 years as a detective. And then you hear what he has listened to, 600 phone calls from Richard Allen, 600, and a lot of confessions that he.
So the pool of information that this detective is picking from is 600 phone calls. So so they had to pick through that 600 hours. Did she say 600 calls or 600 hours? I'm sorry. But anyway, that is a lot of stuff to pick through. And law enforcement has to be able to determine what is a real confession and what is not, to be able to enter it into evidence in a court, right? So to me, is it not difficult to believe? It's not difficult to believe that he might have been coerced into a confession in a police setting, in an interrogation. but to do it unprovoked and triggered or whatever, so many more times, to me, that's significant. It's significant. They're going if they want, and that's part of what this entire hearing is about. The defense wants these calls and these confessions thrown out. They don't want them played in court. They're saying that it's coerced. So it'll be very interesting to see what the judge decides. We don't have the decision yet.
He was going through exactly what was said, and he was so on point. It was, as Anya and Kevin said, everyone's taken aback by, oh my gosh, that's what was said. Oh my gosh. Because as you know, the defense does not want any of the confessions allowed in. And he was just, I mean, as a witness, Vinny, as you know, a star witness, I would call him, Detective Brian Harshman. Something that stood out to me, though, because I was on the side of the family. I was sitting next to Becky and also next to Tara and Libby's grandmother and Libby's aunt. And one of the statements that he allegedly made through the phone calls that Harshman has listened to, all 600, was he's sorry for killing Abby. And nothing about Libby. And then I saw Becky cry. And I have a straight view to Richard Allen, straight view. And this was the first time I've seen him in person. And yesterday I was there. And what stood out to me, Vinny, he turned around to us, I'm with the families, and glared and didn't lose the stare. And I said, what's going on to Tara? And she said, oh, he always does this. And he doesn't lose the gaze in your eyes. It's creepy, to say the least. And it's bizarre.
So hey, Johnny, just a question for us to ponder in our minds, right? Is if he wasn't guilty, why would he say it so many times? Hey, Sparkles, you haven't missed much. If he isn't guilty, why did he say it so many times over the course of all those calls, right? And what is the explanation for this behavior of turning around and glaring at people in court? Why? Why does he do those things? What is what's the purpose? Why does a defendant, an alleged murderer, sit there in court and turn around and glare at the victim's family? Why? Why does he do that? There's two ways you can explain it. One is he's just mad that they're blaming him. The other is that he's guilty. That he's guilty and he harbors anger and homicidal rage inside of him, right? Now, also, why in one of these calls would he only feel sorry for killing one of them? Why is that? If this is all true.
And I don't know, maybe it is. Of course, they're trying to allege that he lost his sanity because he was in a prison and not in a jail, which he should be. But there's so much at stake here, as you mentioned, and the judge has a lot of decisions to make. But the confessions, I mean, think about how many. And the jailhouse calls. And as you know, Vinny, they tell you this is being recorded. They even tell Richard Allen's wife.
So that's another very important point. They know that these jail calls are being recorded and monitored. They know this, right? So it's not like the police is surreptitiously recording him in conversations that he doesn't think are eventually going to surface, unless he's just done, So anyway, I want to make clear, I also haven't made my mind up about this case because I haven't followed it closely and I also haven't covered it. I have watched all of the different opinions flying back and forth and generally followed it. I have not made up my mind, but to me, it's really, really, really serious when a person is found to have confessed over 60 times. So, anyway, we'll keep watching this.
This is being recorded. So it's not hidden. They know what they're saying is being recorded.
So, Kevin, was any of this played inside the courtroom?
It was not a word of it was played. We just heard Detective Harshman describe the contents of these phone calls. He described them in some detail. He even described how Richard Allen's mother and wife reacted when he called them for the first time and said, "I did this." He said that Richard Allen's mother said, "Oh, they must be messing with your mind." And Kathy Allen said, stop talking, I'm going to call Brad." And then she abruptly hung up and then presumably called Brad Rosie, who's one of Richard Allen's defense attorneys.
Now, something else. I mean, the defense has filed some papers on all of this, and they're making the allegation that Richard Allen confessed to molesting the two young girls and also shooting them in the back. Were they shot in the back?
They were not.
So that's, and sorry if I'm answering, if you wanted Anya and Kevin too, but the defense is saying, look, Rosie stood up and said, look, there's some allegations here that weren't true, meaning shot in the back. So what the defense is trying to establish is, look, because he was in this prison and because he was treated so poorly and because this weighed on his mental state, that he was just saying anything and everything, meaning they weren't molested, meaning they weren't shot in the back. So how can you take some things to be true and other things not to be true?
And that is an interesting point for the defense. If he's saying, oh, and I molested them, I shot them in the back, and that wasn't found to be forensically true, that is on the defense's, to the defense's benefit. Because then you see that he's just uttering things and he isn't in his right mind. So we're going to have to, we as a people, as the court of public opinion, have to take into account that we don't know everything. We're not going to really see anything until they start reporting from the actual trial. And, I would imagine that at a certain point, we're going to be able to hear some of these calls, whether it's during the trial or after the trial is over, and we'll be able to judge for ourselves. But, I would have to kind of hear the transcript to determine for my own opinion, whether he just sounded completely off and he was like just rambling and just saying, uttering things to just, try to make things better and get out of there. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, and I also know that this case has been a shit show. And we have lost the trust of law enforcement in this case. We've lost the trust. We lost our trust in the judicial system around this case. That's why what's most important to me is the real evidence that comes out,
Go ahead, Anya. I know you wanted to jump in on this. So is the allegation that he's making 60 confessions that aren't consistent with one another, saying different things at different times about what happened?
That was brought up, and what I thought was super interesting was Detective Harshman mentioned that he believed that may have come from an interview with an inmate. So basically, there may be a game of telephone going on where inmates are hearing him confess and then relaying that back incorrectly. But as far as actual
and that's another point for the defense. They're not going to stream the trial, Chopper. It's already decided. It's not going to happen. So that's another point for the defense, is that it appears that, there might be a game of telephone going on in the things that he's saying to inmates and then are being relayed back. And if there are like 50 different types of confessions in those 60 confessions, then that sounds like he might be just completely losing it, Keep complaining, Chopper. They may listen.
Recorded statements, we didn't hear anything about inaccuracies from what he's actually recorded saying.
Okay, so some of these alleged confessions that the defense is referencing might actually be referencing statements made to other inmates, and the other inmates are relaying that information. So that would make some sense. Susan, is the family hearing this stuff for the very first time inside the courtroom?
Oh yeah, I'm right next to them. It's the first day I was with Anya and Kevin, and there is a community in that courtroom who supports the family and who is online, and I see Becky for the first time, and she says sit between us. I said it's not appropriate. I should sit with the family. She said no. So I haven't bird's eye view from the family side. And I see Richard Allen looking their way, and I see the people on the stand looking their way, and I hear what they're saying for the first time. And I will say that of course, they're strong. They want to be there. They're going to be there every single day. But Becky, what really hurt her, several things did. What they mentioned today, speaking of Brian Harshman, he said, yes, he spoke to what motivated him to do this. And I'm thinking, what is it? I'm leaning, he didn't mention that. Maybe that's for trial. So many times he's mentioned.
So the officer who testified about all of this and kind of basically dropped this bomb in court yesterday. Oh gosh, what was it that I was just sorry, hold on. Let's hear that again.
And I will say that of course, they're strong. They want to be there. They're going to be there every single day. But Becky, what really hurt her, several things did. What they mentioned today, speaking.
Right. It just came back to me. So in one of these confessions, or in some of them, he actually talks about his motive, which is interesting. So this is going to be an incredibly, it's going to be hard to watch this all go down without being able to watch it, in real time. Now that we're really used to being able to see these trials play out in real time, this is going to, the patience. Mayla's mom, are you going to actually go to the trial? I'm only saying that because I know you feel so strongly about it and it's not going to be on TV. I bet there's going to be so many people from social media in that room.
Of Brian Harshman, he said, yes, he spoke to what motivated him to do this. And I'm thinking, what is it? I'm leaning, he didn't mention that. Maybe that's for trial. So many times he's mentioned things on the phone, but I could tell where Rosie is going. He said to this detective who's been in law enforcement 30 plus years, so you had a plan. This was the plan, to get all these recorded phone calls alluding to the fact that all law enforcement wanted to get together and say, this is the guy, this is who we think it is. Let's drive him crazy by keeping the crazy, quote unquote, by keeping the lights on in his cell and giving him mental, because they did mention that he didn't feel physically abused. He was asked that. He felt mentally abused. So I could see where the defense is going, saying they wore him down mentally, that he did make these false confessions. But they did try to wipe out some of them. Fran Gold making no decisions yet. Tomorrow's another hearing. We'll see what she decides. But these are key moments. It feels like a mini trial to me.
Absolutely. I mean, and like you said, this is game-changing stuff. How about the defense? Because the one thing that, took us aback a little bit was the level of aggressiveness of the defense. And hey, listen, this guy, it's not that you can't prove it. It's he didn't do it. We know who did. And it's these other people connected to Odinism. Do you get the sense from these hearings that the defense is still all in on those types of arguments and theories? Kevin, what do you think?
I think we'll really get the answer to that tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to focus.
So the tomorrow they're referring to is today. And I did look to see if there were any updates before I went live, and I did not see any updates from the hearing from today. So I really, what they're basically saying is we've now had this officer testifying about all these confessions and whatever else is coming out in this particular hearing. And today is really going to be when we're going to hear more from the defense on their arguments against allowing those confessions into evidence. And we aren't going to be able to hear what their arguments are until, maybe Court TV or somebody else covers it later. But I wanted to go live about this today. Yeah, I know Gold won't even allow audio. So it's like, we just have to really take it for the word of the people who are reporting on it. And then of course, transcripts come out later and you see those.
Focus on whether or not the defense is even going to be allowed to talk about Odinism in the actual trial. In order to do that, they're going to have to convince the judge that there is a connection between the Odinists and these murders. And they are going to present whatever evidence they have to that effect tomorrow. So that will be their chance to try to undo what happened this evening, which would be a pretty high hurdle to clear. And frankly, I'm not sure it's possible.
And Anya, am I correct that a lot of the information connected to the Odinism, there was this task force, and there were some members of the task force who were trying to solve the case that were going down that road for a certain amount of time?
Yes, and in fact, they had one of those officers up on the stand yesterday, Kevin Murphy, formerly of the Indiana State Police. And one thing that stuck with me that they asked of him was essentially, were you ever able to connect Brad Holder directly with the crime? And his answer was an emphatic no. So you had people on that investigation who are admitting, we didn't get there. We didn't get to probable cause. We didn't get to the arrest request at that point. And so I think that's important to remember, that even people on that team are kind of maybe saying, well, we didn't quite get there. Although it sounds like they did quite a good investigation and certainly were looking into it very intently.
And if they did do the investigation, right, then it should be relatively easy for the defense to show that, listen, the investigation did not lead to them. We did the investigation. This isn't new stuff.
Well, he mentioned, he did mention, he said, look, he was asked this. So was he a suspect? On the stand yesterday, he said, well, in certain circles. So you could see the divide in law enforcement. So I think therein lies the problem of what was true and what was not. It felt like two separate investigations.
And that's how things get so messed up, and so this has been such a heartbreaking case, because it took so freaking long for them to arrest somebody. They came up with other potential suspects before they made this arrest. This arrest has been controversial. The entire court playing out stuff it has been controversial. This is really, really, really tough. So it'll be interesting to see what the judge decides and whether this stuff would this is a really tough decision to make. Are these confessions going to be allowed in court? And I'm sure there are other big decisions that are being made as part of this trial or this pretrial hearing that we're going to hear about that is going to be popular with some people and not popular with some people. Chopper says, if I was one to run for president, I would make that my number one reason for running. That's your day one thing. Live stream all trials. Love it, Chopper. So let's see if there's any there. That was really the most important update. And I don't want to play Court TV's entire segment on this. It's their content. I just wanted to show you that really, really important part. And how it shocked me. But another point I wanted to make on all of this is, you see how rabid people get about, defending a certain defending a certain defendant or, suspect or another. I just think people should try not to be so incredibly just rabid and tied into their opinion and so married to their opinion that they're going to attack other people who have a different opinion. I'm not saying none of you in this chat, this applies to none of you in this chat. I'm just talking about just creators in general. And, then there are those certain unethical, very unscrupulous creators who will take it, will declare the guilt or innocence of a particular suspect. And then when actual evidence flies up in their face, like potentially this, they don't correct the record. They just have it. They have their own agenda. And I feel like that's a cycle we need to break. In true crime is trying to push one agenda or another in, on channels with court cases. So anyway, I I just thought it was important to highlight this and bring this up. If yeah, when people can't handle different opinions than their own, and then they attack the person with a different opinion, it's like, just run away from that person, because they clearly have aren't able to engage in a healthy, rational, logical dialogue, or have uncomfortable conversations without feeling the need to retaliate and exact some sort of vengeance. And it's just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So one thing I've been talking to my chat about lately here is I am planning to start a new channel, but I'm not going to link it to this channel or my other channel. It's an entirely new channel where I'm not going to talk shit about YouTube. On this channel and my other channel, I've talked so much shit about YouTube that I'm pretty sure that it got me in trouble with YouTube. So I am starting an entirely new channel where I'm not going to talk shit on YouTube. I'm just going to talk about true crime from a very specific perspective, which is about breaking cycles. Breaking cycles. So every time we review a case, we look through a case, or updates on a case, it's about how do we break the cycle, heal and repair from these destructive patterns that we are in, that we get ourselves in as individuals and as society. So if you are interested in getting a notification via email about my new channel when it's available, please send me an email at disorderinthecourt2@gmail.com or checkmatehumanity at gmail.com. I'll put those in the chat. I just put my pay links in the chat if anyone feels compelled to donate to support the channel. My email address again is humanity@gmail. This is the easiest email address to use. If you're not okay with email, that's fine. We'll figure out another way to make sure you know. A lot of you have already emailed me, and all you have to put in the subject line when you email me wanting to know what the new channel is, just write, I want to know. That's all you have to do. You just put, I want to know. But if you aren't comfortable with email, no worries. But you will never find anybody on here saying that I was disrespectful with people's private information. I don't do that. I'm not that type of a creator. So thank you all for being here. Thanks for being respectful in chat. I do plan to follow updates on this. And I do also plan to start going live here on this channel again about another trial to stream, but I haven't figured out exactly when or which trial yet. There are some trials in the futures coming up that I'm highly anticipating, but I'm still kind of figuring out what I'm going to be streaming in the next, in the near future. So. All right, everyone. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for being respectful. And I will see you around. I will see you around the streets. Okay. Bye-bye. Have a great rest of your day.